Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our homeroom. I hope you are doing well, enjoying some nice fall weather. It's finally starting to get a little cooler here in Florida, which has been awesome. That also means, though, it is time to get into the thick of holiday season. And when that happens, our kids tend to kind of be all over the place. We see a lot of misbehavior. We might see maybe some slipping of grades, things like that. So I thought today would be a really great time to start talking about how we manage our children's behavior and how control actually doesn't work. So let's talk about that really, really important truth. Kind of take a deep breath and say it with me. I cannot control my children. Can you say that and repeat that and feel its deep, deep truth? We just can't control our kids. We can try and we can try, but ultimately we just cannot control other human people. So when you think of the idea of letting go of control, do you feel a little bit of truth in that? Maybe a little bit of relief? You might get some fear and resistance come up too. But when we can admit that we cannot control our children, it opens everything up to some other possibilities that I promise you work way better than control. So if I'm saying those statements and that feels true for you, you're feeling a little bit of relief, or you're feeling like, yes, it would be great to have some other options than trying to control because controlling isn't working and I'm exhausted, then perfect. This episode is for you because I'm going to give you some strategies to use in place of control. However, if you are listening and you're feeling anxious and stressed about the idea of letting go of control, that does not seem to feel true for you and your family, then that's okay. You may not be at a point where letting go of control is the best thing for you or your family. So that's okay. So try to come back on episode 7 and just skip this one. But if it is true for you, I'm very excited to share some of this information with you. I had that epiphany early on with my teaching that controlling was just making everything worse for me, for the kids, and I had to come up with different ways to get my students to do what I needed them to do in class that did not depend on control, because that never worked. So if this feels right for you, then let's go ahead and dive right into we can't control our kids. So now what? So control has been a tactic that humans have used for literally eons to get other people to act or behave in a way that that person wants them to. Comes from this hierarchical power structure that we have had forever, but it does not work because ultimately we know it is impossible to control other human people. So that's one of the reasons why parents have used control forever, even though we know it doesn't work. It is the way society is set up. It's the way our parents tried to parent us. It feels easier to just yell at and lecture and punish and do those things. But ultimately, it just makes things worse. So what I want to talk to you today, we're going to talk about why it makes things worse, and then I'm going to give you some solutions for different things to do that where you can still try to get behavior that you want from your children, but without having to use control. So why does control make things worse? Why is controlling never going to work? One is because it is impossible. We can't actually do that. So then it becomes just a short-term fix. And because it is trying to control another human, it's going to cause relationship disconnection, which means other misbehavior. So maybe not the misbehavior you're trying to control at the moment, but that misbehavior is going to seep out in other ways because we can't control other people. And when other people are feeling like they're trying to be controlled, they usually don't like it very much. And so they're going to find other ways to rebel or act out. So, because controlling comes from this place of fear and worry and doubt, it's like anxiety. You're up here, you're in this kind of head space, anxiety space. Then again, you try to exert control, you try to get someone else to do something. It is impossible to do that. So then it creates just this never ending cycle of stress and anxiety, and then it's harming the relationship. You might be trying to control for a reason that is because you need to feel better. Maybe whatever their behavior is stressing you out and triggering you. So if you could just stop their behavior, you would stop feeling bad. Or it could be for a legitimate reason. Maybe there is a health or safety reason or an or order in the home reason that you actually need that behavior to change. And those are all okay, but it won't ever work. So instead of using control, I'm going to go over some ways later on that you can use instead to really get that behavior the way you want it to without having to use control. All right, so let's delve into this a little bit more. It's impossible, right? We can think that we can control our kids because they're children. They're younger than us, and we can make them do what we want them to do. And I know you're laughing and thinking to yourself, yes, I've tried that, and it doesn't work, right? We can try. And what happens is when we try and it doesn't work, we get bigger and badder, right? So then it becomes, I'm going to push my child. I'm going to punish my child. I'm going to elicit fear. So my child is scared to do anything different. So we're going to fight. I'm going to fight with my child. So we start getting bigger and bigger and bigger to control, but it is not going to work because we can't control someone else's behavior. However, we can control our behavior. It is possible for us to control our behavior. So that's really what we want to shift from. So we want to shift from this idea of controlling someone else to how do we control ourselves. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. Because it is never going to work, it is short term. Fear and punishment work to get compliance from people. And I'm sure you can think of a work situation where this has happened, where maybe an employer has a punishment or a reward set up. So you are going to do whatever you can to please that employer so that you win the reward or avoid the punishment. But eventually, you're going to mess up again. You're going to do the misbehavior again, or you're going to give up and just stop caring at all. Compliance is not a long-term situation. Compliance is short-term. So the reason our children are misbehaving the way they are is because of an unmet need. So when we just control by putting over a band-aid, it might appear to stop that misbehavior, but the wound underneath is actually not being healed because we are not providing our children's needs. Remember, the only reason a child misbehaves is because of unmet needs. So we want to make sure we are providing that need for long-term behavior change, not short-term or compliance. Okay, and because we're fighting with our children and because we are pushing and punishing, it is going to cause disconnection and break up that relationship. Control does not care about the needs of that other person, and that is what harms relationships. Once that relationship is harmed and those needs are not being met and there is disconnection, it's going to cause other misbehaviors. Yes, so maybe they stop jumping on the couch or, fighting with their brother at the moment, but by yelling at them and punishing them, taking away the things that they love, all of those things, it destroys the relationship, which then causes things like resentment, rebellion, revenge-seeking behavior. All of those start to seep out on the side. So we don't want that to happen because then we're just going to have those misbehaviors to deal with. So instead, we're going to want to create this team mindset that values others and fosters cooperation. So cooperation is magical because cooperation is about working together because there's mutual respect and mutual value. And the focus for the child will become on changing the behavior, not just pleasing the adult for this brief moment. So then cooperation is long-term change, and that's where we want to get to. And we want to also, keep a really good relationship with our kids because remember, our relationship with them is the most important thing. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few examples of some common things that parents over the years have tried to control that haven't really worked out, and we're going to talk about why. So for instance, in a messy room, this one is so common. Parents want their kids to have a nice, organized, clean room, or at least one where there's not laundry all over the floor, and that is a legitimate reason, and that is fine. However, you're never going to be able to control how they keep their room. You can try, and short term, Yes, might you get them to clean their room? But eventually it's just going to cause other misbehavior because of the yelling and the lecturing and things like that. They may now roll their eyes at you. You might start getting disrespect. So you're going to get other misbehaviors. So messy rooms, can't control them. We're going to talk about other ways to handle it instead. School performance is another one. Sometimes our children really don't care about how they do in school, and mom wants them to get all A's, and or dad wants all missing assignments cleared up every week, and that's fine. You can have those expectations, and you can try to push for that, and you can try to control, and you can offer rewards, and you can have punishments hanging around in case they don't do those things. But ultimately, it is not teaching them true ownership of their school. It is not cooperating together on how to make school the best for everyone. It is just very top-down leadership, and eventually it will not work. The other example that comes up a lot is parents who want their children doing a certain activity or playing a certain sport or taking specific classes in schools. Kids have their own interests and need their own independence and choice there. So you can try to force your children to play a specific sport or take specific classes or after school clubs. But ultimately, if they do not want to do that, they're either going to give up or start performing or rebelling, quietly defying. So eventually, long term, you're not going to win that battle unless it is something they're actually interested in. We really can't control what our children are interested in. So, what do we do instead? If we are not able to control, how can we get them, though, to have healthy behavior? It's still good to have good grades. It's still great to have a clean room. Those things are all great, but how can we encourage those things without using control? So let's get to that next. So if we can no longer control, if we've realized that doesn't work, what do we do instead? So instead of using the words controlling our kids, I want us to think about it as leading our children. There is a difference between a boss that controls and a leader that promotes cooperation, right? So that's what we're going to start thinking about today. Leading comes from a calm, trusting place. It's not up in our headspace like control. We're worried, we're fearful, we're doubtful, our energy is down, we are in our body, we are prioritizing the needs of the group, which is going to then promote cooperation, which will give us that long-term change, and it will keep us really connected to our children so that we have that nice, fulfilling relationship, because that is our number one goal. Remember, it is more important than grades they have at school. It is more important than a clean room. It is more important than making sure they get the right sports or activities. That relationship that you have with your children is the biggest indicator of their future success. So we want to make sure that that is prioritized. So we do that when we lead. When we lead, we're taking everybody's thoughts into account. We're sitting around a conference table. We're still the head of the family. We are still the ones that are going to make those decisions, but we're going to listen to everybody at the table, take their ideas into consideration, think about the best way to run this family. What is everyone's needs? What is everyone's rights, responsibilities? What order do we need to have to make this family run smoothly? And then you're going to make decisions from that place. Now, that can be hard and can be a tall order because we are also human and are going to have days where we're going to be stressed and upset and whatever, and controlling just is going to come out. We're going to yell and scream and lecture, and that's okay. You can always go back and apologize later. There will be days when you will not be perfect, but I'm going to give you some strategies today that will make it easier to just shift yourself from that controlling place into a more leadership mindset. So even if you're not perfect, that's okay. These strategies will help you get there. So let's talk about the steps to get that have always worked for me and for many of my parents that I've coached as well. So step one is sometimes the hardest step, and that is just admitting the reality that whatever behavior it is that you are trying to get from your children, they don't want to do it, and you can't make them. And that is very hard, but you can't make your kid have that clean room. You can't make them have good grades in school. You can't make them have interest in something that they don't have interest in. So just admitting that they don't want get A's in school, admitting they don't want a clean room, admitting they don't want to do that sport. That is sometimes the first step. As soon as you can do that and you can admit that that is something they don't want and you can't control it, then you can let go and start thinking about different expectations that will work instead. Maybe bring them down a little bit. Maybe all A's is too high, but maybe you can talk and cooperate with your child and come up with a grade system that would work for everyone, so that you're not fighting, you're not trying to control them. So once you have admitted the big truth and gotten to that place of letting go of control and you're ready to lessen your expectations, step 2 is to, I'm always going to say with all misbehavior, is to follow the 4 P's. I explain these in detail in episode 4. So if this is the first time you've heard about this, make sure to check out episode 4 where I go into detail, but I'll give you a short little cheat sheet version now. So our children are only misbehaving because they have an unmet need. So our responsibility as parents, we still want to care for our children. We still need to lead them. And to do that appropriately, it is getting curious about what their missing needs are. Looking at misbehavior not as something to take personal, but just as a clue to what an unmet need is. So to do that, I use what I call the 4 P's. So that is to pause, and that's to pause so you can step back from that misbehavior, look at it like a clue, take a deep breath, bring our energy down so we are in more of a calm and trusting place. And we're not triggered by that misbehavior because we're remembering that it's just a clue that they have an unmet need. So pause, bring your energy down, shift your dynamic into looking at misbehavior that way and creating kind of a me and my child on the same team. Let's figure out this. Why is my child misbehaving? Then you're going to pay attention to all those feelings that are happening. How are you feeling? How are they feeling? And that's going to help you pinpoint the missing need. All missing needs are based on negative, create negative feelings, which then creates the negative behavior. So if the feelings are our little portal into what the actual missing need is. So paying attention to feelings, that can lead you into what the missing need is. Then once you have figured out, if I was feeling that way, what would I probably need? Then you can prescribe something in the moment to alleviate that need momentarily, and then provide a strategy long term to keep that need fulfilled so that that misbehavior then disappears. Like I said, we want to heal the deep wound. We don't want to just cover up the scab. We want to make sure we're actually figuring out what that missing need is so we can provide it, and then the misbehavior will go away. So there are 6 main needs and misbehaviors that go with each of those. So I'm going to cheat sheet you into what probably the missing needs are here. There could be a bunch of them, but chances are if you're trying to control some behavior in this situation, it is usually a boundary need that is missing. It is either their boundary need, that they need some independence, they need some space because they are also have a need for their own boundaries. So it's either their boundaries that they're fighting for, and you're going to have that power seeking, or it is your boundaries that they are overstepping, and you're going to feel that limit pushing. They're pushing in on you, and you may have some boundaries that need to be enforced. So we're going to talk about 2 strategies that will help get those boundaries under control. One is curious guidance for the power seeking child, and one is enforceable statements for you who may need to enforce some boundaries. Both of these strategies, curious guidance and enforceable statements, they are going to reciprocate boundaries and enforce boundaries without using control. So this is a way to change behavior without having to use control, which we all know, again, is ultimately not going to work. So first, let's talk about our children who need some more independence and space. You may need to reciprocate some boundaries for them. If you are feeling like it is defiance or fighting back kind of misbehaviors, if you're feeling challenged or angry, chances are they are power seeking because they feel a need for space or independence in control or power in some way. They are feeling that they're not having enough of that, and so they're fighting for it. So the solution, Give it to them as much as you can. Find places in their life that you can provide power, control, choices, voice, independence, space, anything to start giving them some more control and space in their lives. That's what those children need. Now, if you think about that and you think, well, then what? My hands are just off and I don't have any say. No, in fact, what you're going to do instead is this idea of stepping to the side. So give them some space and control in the situation. And then you're going to use curious guidance to help guide them towards making some really good decisions. You're also going to be okay with mistakes if they make the wrong decisions, right? So keep that in mind. But you're going to use questions as much as you can to give them that feeling of ownership and control and the feeling that they want to feel capable, that they can do these things on their own. Nobody likes to do things because they've been told to do them. We all like to do them because they're important to us, and we want the pride and feeling of feeling capable when we do those things ourselves. So for your power seekers, you're going to use curious guidance. So with our little children, limited choices is a really good solution. You don't want to offer up every, open-ended questions because sometimes they don't know that what all the choices are. So you want to limit those down to things that work, for you. I always use the example of like a child in a grocery store that is fighting, doesn't want to sit in the grocery cart, but it's either that or you hold my hand because there's no other choice that will keep you safe. So giving them limited choices for those little young children is really helpful. With our older children, though, our teenagers especially, you're going to want to give as much independence as control as you can, and then just step back and ask them questions. A really good questions to start with is, what do you want? Do you want a messy room or do you want a clean room? What kind of room do you want to have? What kind of grades do you want in school? What kind of activities are you interested in and why? Ask them why. Get to know their actual answer. You'd be surprised at how much kids don't feel like anybody cares what they want. And it is their life. And so if you've got a kid that is fighting you, chances are they really would love that question. What is it that they actually want? And ask them why. Get their ideas. That will give you some really good information to help then start guiding them towards things. Well, how can we work together to make that room work for you? How can we work together to get your grades where you want them to be? How can we work together to find interests and activities that you really want? That's another great guiding question. If they go to make decisions and they are not really sure, you can offer up options like, well, have you ever thought about tutoring? Maybe that would help with your grades. Have you ever thought about buying some different kind of organizers or, figuring out a different way to organize your closet? Have you ever thought about trying this or that class? Maybe that would work for you. So that's another great question. Getting their ideas for things. What are your ideas for how to organize a room? Maybe they've got ideas you haven't thought of. They know things sometimes we are surprised that they know. So get their ideas for how to make their grades work. Get their ideas for what activities might work for them. And then if they choose something and the outcome does not work out the way it should have, or the way you would have liked, or the way they would have liked, instead of telling them they made the wrong decision, just say, how do you feel about that outcome? And if they're not happy with it, what can you do next time to get an outcome that works out better for you? So you're just getting this role and mindset of being the guide on the side. You're guiding them, you're letting them make mistakes because that's part of growing. You're cheering them on, you're telling them you believe in them, you are giving them as much space and independence as possible, especially when it comes to messy rooms. Who really cares? I tell my parents all the time, that's the one thing you can give your kids control in. You just don't have to go in the messy room, which is what lines up with enforceable statements we'll talk about here. You can just say, hey, you know what? You can leave your room however you want to leave it. I'm just stressed when I come in there because it's so messy. So I'm just not going to come in. That means I'm not going to do your laundry. I'm not going to clean up the floor. I'm not vacuuming. I can't come in and give you a hug goodnight. We'll have to do that in the hallway. So you can control what you're doing. You can just not go in the space and then let go of them having that messy room. They're going to figure it out eventually, but you pushing them to do it and fighting them about it is not going to work. So again, curiosity is really great for our kids who are seeking some power. Giving them choices, giving them voice in things, independence and space, and then using questions to guide them is a really great strategy. However, if you are seeing limit pushing behavior where you feel like you've set the rules up and they are just overstepping your rules and it is not safe, it is not keeping order in the home, then it may be time for you to enforce your boundaries. There is a way to do that without controlling. The first thing we want to think about is making sure that the things we're trying to enforce are actual boundaries. Boundaries follow these standards. One, they serve a real life purpose for us and the family. They might keep people safe. That it might maintain order and structure in the home. They are necessary, and everyone's rights and freedoms are being respected. So boundaries maintain respect for self, respect for others, and order of the space. So keep that in mind, because if you are trying to make them do something just because you want them to, they are going to have a real hard time with that, because they're going to see through that it's not actually necessary. So you want to make sure that what you have is an actual boundary. Then you're going to use these enforceable statements, which are calm, concise, and have a direct correlation to each other. So for instance, here's some great sentence structures that you can use. So when blank, then I will blank. So for instance, when your shoes are on, then I know you're ready to leave. And you do not leave until their shoes are on. Again, and your boundaries are the way that control your behavior. They are not trying to control someone else, but you're basically saying, I am not leaving until your shoes are on. So you just sit and you wait. And you may need to pre-plan that a little bit and give a little extra time for those days. Another really great statement that is about what you will do is, I will blank when. I will continue driving when the car is quiet. If it's loud, you pull over and you wait and you say, I'll continue driving when the car is quiet, and you wait. They get loud again, you pull over again. So again, prepare for that day that you're going to enforce that boundary. You leave a little bit of extra time. I don't suggest doing it on the way to school when everybody's panicked to get there on time, but do it in a way that you can enforce the boundary that's not too panicky, but you can keep pulling over until that car is quiet. Again, that is your behavior. That is respecting the rights and responsibilities of everyone in the car. It has to be a safe car to drive. It is a necessary boundary. Another great sentence starter is, I blank to or with children who blank. So I serve dinner to children who have clean hands. Again, this is a necessary part of a household. We do not want to spread germs. So you are not going to serve food to somebody who has dirty hands. So that is an easy way to get your children to wash their hands. You do not give them any food until they wash their hands. Now, there's a whole nother thing on power struggles I could get into for the children who just refuse to clean hands, but that's a whole nother lesson in the day. But usually most kids at this point, they see the necessary reason behind it. They usually don't have a problem following through. All right, you have to be careful with this, that we don't use those to try to control still, and you'll know, because if they're not related, then usually that's a tactic for control. So you're not going to say, I will let you have your phone when you are nice to me. That is not related. Someone's use on their phone has nothing to do with how they're treating you. So be careful that you want to make sure that those are related behaviors that line up. Otherwise, your kids are going to see through that pretty quickly. All right, one more statement that's really, really great for an enforceable statement is, with freedom comes responsibilities. I think it was Allison Schaefer who I read this from years and years ago. She's a parenting expert. She's got books and she's just amazing. So with freedom comes responsibilities, like with freedom to play with toys in the living room comes responsibility to put them away. If you do not put your toys away, you lose the freedom of playing with them in the living room. So that's a really great way to make sure those boundaries are lined up. It is all about freedoms and rights and respect for the home and each other. All right, so again, we want to lead our children. We can lead them. We can lead our power-seeking children with using curious guidance, stepping to the side, giving them as much control as power as possible, but then using questions to guide them. For our children who are limit pushing and you're feeling that your boundaries are being overstepped, you can use enforceable statements that are calm, concise, related ways to enforce boundaries that keep you keep that relationship intact, they're respectful, and then when you keep a relationship intact and everyone's needs are being considered, then chances are you're going to get cooperation, and then that behavior will change long term. All right, let's get into some questions to help you start thinking of how to apply this in your own home. Homework is next. So let's go into these 4 questions that will help you start reflecting on your own family life and how you can start applying these there. Number 1, what is it that you are trying to control? Is that power seeking behavior? Is it making you feel challenged? Is it making you feel angry, feeling like you need to push back? Then it could be power seeking. It could be that your child is trying to fight for their own freedom and their own space. And it might be something that they legitimately need. Or is it limit pushing? Are you feeling like they're pushing your limits and you're being pushed, but these are actual rules that are important? They are legitimate rules and structures that need to be in place for the order of the family. Then that is limit pushing behavior. So number 2, if it is power seeking, what are some ways you can lessen your expectations, let go of control a little bit, and then use curious guidance to give them more freedom while you step to the side? What are some ways you can move over, give them some freedom, and then guide them with questions? Be very careful here too. There is a subtle difference between curious guidance coming from a place of caring and calm and trusting and loving and interrogating our children, right? So interrogation is questions also, but it can come from this accusatory kind of more of a boss place. So just make sure you are in a calm place and you're able to be curious. True curiosity is open. It is not judgmental. You're really just listening and wanting to empathize and hear their side of things. So really make sure you've shifted into a place of curiosity and not interrogation. All right, number 3, if it is limit pushing, if you know this is a rule that has to be enforced, then how can you use enforceable statements to maintain order and respect everyone's rights? What's a way that you can start changing things around so that that behavior stops, because then that will maintain that order and respect for everyone in that moment, and then hopefully then long term that behavior changes, so that makes it easier for everyone. Remember, enforceable statements, they should come from a calm place. They're very concise and they have to be related to each other so as not to come off as controlling. But it is important that we enforce boundaries. I'm going to eventually have an episode on consequences and how to do consequences correctly, because it is important that if we have boundaries, that other people in relationships with us listen and respect our boundaries as well. Okay, and number 4, if you are worrying about the outcome of giving your child more choice and power, why? Where is that worry coming from? What are you worried about? Take some time to investigate where that need for control might be coming from. Do you need more faith in your child and trust in them? Do you need your own power and control somewhere else in your life? Do you need to figure out why a messy room makes you so uncomfortable? So our children many times are our biggest mirrors for our own things that we need to learn to let go of or manage in a better way also. So take some time to really investigate that and figure out why this is something that you feel such a need to control, and imagine yourself letting go of control, and then deal with why, what do you think of and what comes up for you when you think of letting go of control, and how can you learn to start being okay with that or figure out another way to manage that. All right, that is it for today. I hope you found some strategies that might work for your family so that you can let go of some control. I know it's really hard, but I know so many parents who are ready and they don't want to have that fight anymore with their kids. They want to have fun, they want to have a good relationship, but that feeling of control can really get in the way of a good relationship. It causes you stress, it causes them stress. it just really can fracture that relationship. And so finding ways that you can go around that by getting just in a mindset of leading them instead of controlling them. Sometimes just that mindset alone gives you other ideas for solutions on how to help manage your child's behavior. So thank you so much for listening. Please make sure you like or follow or subscribe on whatever platform you are in. Also, don't forget down below, there are links for a worksheet if you would like to print that out. It's actually more of a reference sheet. That way you have those statements printed out for you to refer to later on. And then if you have questions or comments or concerns, I'm open and willing to take it. This is a learning process for me. I'm figuring it out. So please make sure to reach out to me. My email address is my name, kristentame@gmail.com. And I really look forward to hearing from you. And tune back in about 2 weeks. The next episode will be dropping then. All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.